A single dad sat at the wrong table and met the paralyzed CEO who changed his life. The wrong table, Ryan Carter, was never supposed to meet Evelyn Brooks. He wasn't supposed to walk into that restaurant. He wasn't supposed to be led to her table. And he definitely wasn't supposed to sit across from a woman who had spent years making sure strangers never got close enough to see what she was really carrying. But on one of the coldest nights Boston had seen in more than a decade, a hostess made a simple mistake. Table 4 instead of table 14. That was all. One wrong number. One empty chair. One man who was too tired to notice. And before the night was over, Ryan would walk out of a 5-star restaurant beside a woman he'd known less than an hour. Months later, he would race through a blizzard looking for that same woman. And one day, standing in a courtyard behind an auto garage, he would realize that the biggest mistake of his life had actually led him exactly where he belonged. But that night, Ryan knew none of that. All he knew was that Boston was freezing. The snow had started around 4 that afternoon. By 7, it wasn't beautiful anymore. It came sideways through the streets, driven hard by wind that slipped beneath collars and through gloves. Cars crawled through intersections. Sidewalks disappeared beneath gray-white slush. Ryan stood outside Marlowe's with snow collecting on the shoulders of his old wool coat. He stared at the gold lettering over the entrance. This was not his kind of place. The dark jeans were his best pair. The button-down underneath his coat had been chosen years earlier by Claire, his late wife. He still wore it whenever he needed to look like a man who understood restaurants with valet parking. His phone buzzed. "Marcus, you inside yet?" Ryan typed back. "Outside, reconsidering every decision I've ever made." Marcus replied almost immediately. "Get in there. Holt is waiting. Table 14. This could change everything for the shop. That was the only reason Ryan had come. Daniel Holt was a commercial real estate investor Marcus had been trying to connect him with for 6 months. Ryan owned Carter Auto Repair in Dorchester. It was a good garage. More importantly, it was his. He had spent years building a customer base, keeping 4 service bays full, paying his mechanics on time, and making sure his 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, never knew how close some months came to not working. Now the garage was suffocating inside its own success. There was another commercial building 2 blocks away. Larger floor space. More bays. Better storage. If Ryan could buy it, the business could finally grow. Daniel Holt supposedly knew how to make that happen. So Ryan opened the restaurant door. Warm air rushed over him. The room smelled of roasted meat, expensive wine, and polished wood. Conversation stayed low. Glassware caught the amber lighting. A hostess approached. "Good evening. Reservation?" "Ryan Carter." "I'm meeting Daniel Holt." She checked her screen. "I don't have a Holt reservation." Ryan pulled out his phone. He said table 14, back left corner. The hostess glanced toward the dining room. "Of course. Right this way." Ryan followed her. He passed people who looked completely at home in this world. Tailored suits, cashmere coats, watches that probably cost more than his truck. The hostess led him toward a quieter corner separated from the main dining room by frosted glass. "There you are." "Thanks." Ryan barely looked at the small reservation card on the table. If he had, everything might have been different. It said, Brooks, 7:30 p.m., and beneath it, in tiny print, table 4, but Ryan wasn't looking at the card. He was looking at the woman. She sat alone near the window with a glass of red wine in front of her. Dark hair pulled back, charcoal blazer, small gold earrings, no unnecessary accessories. She had her phone in one hand and a look on her face that Ryan recognized immediately. Someone was late, and she was trying very hard not to care. Then she looked up. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and alert. "Can I help you?" Ryan stopped. "Table 14? 4, he looked down. Then at the reservation card. Then back at her. Oh, for the first time that night, the cold outside seemed preferable. "I'm sorry. The hostess brought me here. I thought, it's fine. I'll find the actual table. Probably wise. He gave an embarrassed nod and turned. That was when he noticed the wheelchair beside her. It was sleek and lightweight, positioned close enough that she could transfer between it and the dining chair. Ryan registered it and moved on. No stare, no awkward pause, no sudden change in tone, just another object in the room. He returned to the hostess. The confusion took less than 2 minutes to solve. Unfortunately, the solution was worse. Daniel Holt had canceled 40 minutes earlier. No message, no apology. Ryan immediately texted Marcus. Marcus responded with several words Sophie wasn't allowed to say. Then, he's a flake. Sorry, man, eat something at least. You drove all the way there. Ryan looked toward the bar. Full 20-minute wait. He looked outside. The storm was getting worse. He should have left. Instead, he found himself walking back toward table 4. The woman was still there, still alone, still checking her phone. Ryan stopped several feet away. I promise this is the last time I'm going to bother you. She looked up. My meeting got canceled. I'm leaving. But before I go, I feel obligated to tell you that whoever you're waiting for is an idiot. Something almost became a smile. He isn't officially late enough to be an idiot. Ryan checked his watch. How late? 22 minutes. In a Boston blizzard? First date. I'm allowing weather-related grace. That's extremely generous. I've been told. Ryan smiled. Well, good luck. He turned. You can sit. He looked back. She nodded toward the empty seat. The table is unnecessarily large. You're clearly freezing. Sit until your ride comes or until I leave. I don't want to interrupt your date. If he ever arrives, I'll survive the transition. Ryan hesitated, then pulled out the chair. Ryan, Evelyn, the waiter arrived. Ryan scanned the drink menu and ordered the least expensive beer he could find. $11. He resisted making a face. Evelyn noticed. Expensive? I've purchased engine parts for less. That did it. She smiled. Not much, but enough. For several minutes they said nothing. Ryan took a bread roll. Evelyn pushed the basket slightly closer to him. Eventually she asked, So why were you meeting someone here? Business. What kind? I own a garage. She waited. Ryan was used to a particular reaction after saying that in rooms like this. People usually reassessed him. Evelyn didn't. Instead, she asked, A good garage? Best within 10 blocks. How many competitors? 4. Less impressive. Much. There it was again. That almost smile. Ryan relaxed. He explained the expansion, the building near his shop, the cellar, the financing problem. Evelyn listened differently from most people. She didn't wait for her turn to speak. She listened to understand. When Ryan finished, she asked, Why has the property been vacant so long? Zoning dispute with the previous tenant. Resolved? Finally, how long did it take? Almost 2 years. So the landlord has been bleeding carrying costs while the building sat empty. Ryan looked at her. That's my assumption. Then your leverage is stronger than you think. She picked up her wine. Buy it if you can. Not lease? Not if the numbers are close. Ryan leaned back slightly. You work in real estate? Near it. That's vague. Intentionally, he laughed. And somehow, after that, the conversation became easy. Evelyn learned that Ryan had a daughter. 7 years old. Sophie. She was spending the evening with Marcus and his wife, B, whom Sophie called Aunt B despite having no blood relation to her. That sounds like family to me, Evelyn said. That's what I tell her. And her mother? Ryan's expression changed only slightly. Claire died 4 years ago. Evelyn didn't drown him in sympathy. She simply nodded. I'm sorry. Thank you. Then she allowed the conversation to move forward. Ryan liked her for that. At 7:43, Evelyn's date arrived. Everyone heard him. Evelyn, you would not believe these roads. He crossed the restaurant wearing a tailored suit and carrying the energy of a man accustomed to being forgiven. My driver could barely do 15. Then he noticed Ryan. His smile changed. Oh, Evelyn gestured. Jonathan Mercer. This is Ryan Carter. Ryan accidentally sat here before you arrived. Jonathan offered a hand. Interesting, Ryan shook it. He intended to leave. He truly did. Then Jonathan sat down. Your mother tells me you're running the investment division at Brooks Capital. CEO, Evelyn said. Jonathan blinked. Right, of course. A brief silence. That must be challenging. The work is challenging. I meant considering. His eyes moved toward the wheelchair. Barely a second. But Ryan saw it. Evelyn saw it too, Jonathan continued. I've always believed leadership requires a certain physical presence. Not literally, obviously, but what do you do? Ryan's question cut across him. Jonathan frowned. I'm sorry? For work. Commercial acquisitions. Do people meet you and immediately ask whether your job is difficult because of your body? Jonathan stared at him. I don't think that's because you've known Evelyn for about 30 seconds, and you've already managed to make her wheelchair the most interesting thing about her. Silence, Evelyn looked at Ryan. Jonathan's face hardened. This is a private conversation. It can be. Ryan turned to Evelyn. Do you actually want to stay? Jonathan scoffed. Excuse me? Ryan didn't look at him. I'm asking Evelyn. For several seconds she said nothing. Then something in her expression settled. No. Jonathan stopped moving. Evelyn transferred into her wheelchair with practiced ease and reached for her coat. I don't. Ryan dropped cash on the table for the drinks. Then, he followed her out. The snow hit them instantly. For a few seconds they stood beneath the restaurant awning. You didn't have to do that, Evelyn said. I know. I could have handled him. I know that too. Then why? Ryan looked back through the window. Because he was going to spend the entire dinner insulting you without saying anything obvious enough for you to challenge. A pause. That's worse than direct insults. Evelyn looked at him. Yes, 2 blocks away, Ryan knew a diner. Carver's. Old booths. Bottomless coffee. Good pie. Come on, where? Pie, we just walked out of one of Boston's most expensive restaurants. Exactly, you've earned $9 pie. What kind? Blueberry if we're lucky. You're strangely confident about this. My daughter conducts quality control every Sunday. For the first time that evening, Evelyn laughed. Not the careful, almost smile, a real laugh. They went. Carver's was warm, crowded, and completely unconcerned with appearances. Ryan ordered blueberry. Evelyn did the same. They stayed almost 2 hours. Neither noticed. And by the time Ryan walked her to her car, the strange evening didn't feel like a mistake anymore. Before shutting the door, Evelyn said, Get the assessed value of that building. Ryan raised an eyebrow. You're still thinking about my garage? Someone should. Then what? Compare the seller's asking price to the cost of a 15-year loan. If the gap isn't terrible, buy. You're giving very specific advice for someone who works near real estate. She finally told him. Brooks Capital Holdings. Ryan had heard the name. Almost everyone in Boston business had. He looked at her differently for half a second. Then he caught himself. Thank you. For dinner? For not making tonight terrible. She held his gaze. You helped with that. The car pulled away. Ryan stood in the snow, watching the taillights disappear. He stayed there longer than necessary. 2 days later, Evelyn texted him. Ryan had never given her his number. Marcus eventually confessed. The message read, Building assessment $1.2 million. Seller's carrying costs are approximately $8,000 per month. He's motivated. Call him. Evelyn Ryan stared at his phone. Then called the seller. That phone call changed his business. His next call was to Evelyn. That one changed considerably more. They started finding reasons to speak. First about the property, then about financing, then zoning, then Sophie, then books, then bad coffee, then nothing important at all. The second time they met was at the garage. Evelyn wanted to see what Ryan was buying the new building for. He almost refused. Not because he was ashamed, but because suddenly he noticed every oil stain, every mismatched cabinet, every tool that wasn't where it belonged. She arrived Saturday morning, rolled into the main bay, looked around. It's bigger than I expected. Ryan laughed. That may be the first time anyone has said that about this place. How many working bays? 4 and that one? Storage could be operational. That's the plan. A small voice came from the office. Dad? Sophie stepped out, then froze. She looked at Evelyn, then the wheelchair. Ryan recognized that look. Curiosity before he could intervene, Sophie asked, Does it go fast? Evelyn looked at her. Faster downhill. How fast? Depends how irresponsible I'm feeling. Ryan almost choked. Sophie became instantly interested. There's a really good hill at the park. I'm beginning to suspect you're dangerous. I'm Sophie. Evelyn. Sophie nodded, then wandered back toward the office. Ryan stared after her. What? Evelyn asked. Nothing. That wasn't nothing. You're good with her. She asked a reasonable question. Adults make wheelchair questions weird. Adults make most things weird. Lunch came from Earl's food truck 2 blocks away. Sophie argued with Evelyn about whether tomato soup technically counted as a drink. Evelyn argued back with complete seriousness. Ryan sat there eating grilled cheese and watching them. He didn't want to name what he felt. Naming things made them real. But Saturday started becoming his favorite day of the week. One afternoon, Evelyn asked about Claire. Ryan told her. Claire had been a cardiology resident. They'd moved from Ohio to Boston for her training. Then, 4 years earlier, she'd died in an accident. Sophie had been 3. Evelyn looked toward the little girl negotiating a cookie from Earl. She seems okay, most days. That's all anyone gets. Ryan smiled faintly. A month ago she cried because a ladybug flew away before she could name it. That seems like proportionate grief for a 7-year-old. Ryan stared at her. Did you just perform a risk assessment on a ladybug? I work in investments. You people can't help yourselves. Correct. The weeks moved. Evelyn helped Ryan with the property, more than he expected. One afternoon she arrived carrying a 15-page market analysis, professional projections, comparable properties, loan scenarios, revenue estimates. Ryan flipped through it. How long did this take you? My analyst? 2 hours. You had a Brooks Capital analyst do this? She was available. Evelyn, the numbers favor purchasing. Ryan lowered the document. Why are you helping me this much? For once, she didn't have a quick answer. I wanted to. That was enough. Ryan took the report to his bank. 3 weeks later, financing was conditionally approved. He called Evelyn immediately. We got it. A small pause. Good, you knew we would, I suspected. Thank you. It was 2 hours of analyst time. That's not what I'm thanking you for. Silence, then softly, I know. Their lives kept overlapping. One afternoon, Ryan visited Brooks Capital. 14th floor. Glass walls. Harbor view. The scale of Evelyn's professional life hit him harder there than it ever had over coffee. After a meeting, they stood beside the windows. How long have you run this place? Officially? 5 years. You're 30. My mother founded it. Ryan glanced toward her chair. How long since the accident? Evelyn became very still. 7 years. 23? She nodded. Black ice. Driving back from Providence. Ryan waited. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't distracted. Nothing dramatic. The road just went away from me. Her voice stayed factual. I spent 4 months in the hospital. 7 more in rehab. She looked out toward the harbor. When I came back, people who had known me my entire life suddenly needed evidence that I was still capable of doing my job. The board? 3 of them voted against me. And? We grew 40% over the next 3 years. Ryan smiled. So you answered them. I made the answer expensive to ignore. He liked that. Then he asked, what did you do before? Before the accident? Outside work. She hesitated. I ran. For exercise? Marathons. Ryan looked surprised. I was training for Boston. Do you miss it? This time she didn't hesitate. Every day, she looked down at her hands, not only running. I miss believing that if I asked enough of my body, it would answer. Ryan didn't offer pity. He didn't tell her everything happened for a reason. He didn't tell her she was inspirational. Instead, he said, for what it's worth, anyone in that boardroom still questioning whether you belong there isn't paying attention. Evelyn turned. Was that an attempt at wisdom? A weak one, moderately successful. I'll take it. But she kept looking at him. Then she said something that changed the air between them. I don't usually do this. Do what? Let work and my personal life overlap. Let people get close enough to become both. Ryan understood. You don't have to define this tonight. I know. And you don't have to make it safe before you let yourself have it. That landed deeper. Don't get too good at understanding me, she said. I'll try to remain mediocre. They stood there watching the harbor, close not touching. By March, Evelyn had become part of Sophie's life without anyone deciding that she would. When Sophie got sick, Evelyn texted every few hours. When Sophie recovered, Evelyn arrived carrying expensive tomato soup and a stuffed anglerfish. Sophie immediately named it Evelyn Jr. No, Evelyn said. Yes, absolutely not. Evelyn Jr. Ryan watched. You've lost. I don't accept that. That evening, Sophie fell asleep on the couch, clutching the fish. Ryan and Evelyn sat at the kitchen table. She asked if you're my girlfriend, Ryan said. Evelyn went still. What did you say? That you're my friend. And? She called that a cop-out. She's intelligent. Ryan looked at Evelyn. Very. The quiet changed. There it was. The thing they'd both spent weeks avoiding naming. When Evelyn finally left, she paused beside the car. Saturday? Saturday, Ryan watched her leave. For the first time since Claire died, he allowed himself to imagine another person staying. Then someone took a photograph. A telephoto lens caught them outside Earl's food truck. Ryan carrying trays, Evelyn laughing. Sophie reaching across the table. The image was harmless. The caption wasn't. Brooks Capital CEO spotted in Dorchester with mystery mechanic A.N. Child. Sources say board members ARE watching. Thousands of shares followed. Comments arrived. Some mocked Ryan. Some questioned Evelyn. Some mentioned her wheelchair in ways that made Ryan shut his phone off. And beneath all the noise, one old fear finally found a voice. Maybe he didn't belong in her world. He called Evelyn. You've seen it? My communications director sent it before 7. How bad? The photograph? Fine. The story? Irritating. What does PR want? A statement saying, my private life is private. And what do you want? She exhaled. I want the story to disappear. The words hurt Ryan more than he expected. Evelyn immediately heard it. Ryan, it's okay. No, listen to me. I don't want you to disappear. I want strangers to stop treating my Saturday afternoon like corporate information. He believed her. But once insecurity gets a foothold, facts don't always remove it. Then Margaret Brooks called. Evelyn's mother. Founder of Brooks Capital. She invited Ryan to lunch at a private club. He went. Margaret was polished, direct, and frighteningly intelligent. I'll get to the point, she said. Please. I know Evelyn had an analyst prepare your market report. Ryan said nothing. I am not accusing you of using her. Good, but Evelyn's position at Brooks Capital is more politically vulnerable than outsiders understand. Margaret explained the board. The 3 members who had opposed Evelyn after her accident. The upcoming charitable investment initiative. The media attention. Then she said the word Ryan would remember for months. Distraction. Ryan's jaw tightened. Margaret noticed. I don't mean you are unimportant. That's usually what calling someone a distraction means. She remained calm. The press sees contrast. Evelyn Brooks, billionaire investment executive. Ryan Carter, auto mechanic. There it is. I am describing how others will frame it. And you're telling me because? Margaret held his eyes. Because you strike me as a man who will choose what is best for someone he loves, even when it costs him. She had chosen the perfect weapon. And Ryan knew it. He knew she was pressing directly against the part of him that always believed sacrifice proved love. Still, it worked. For 2 weeks, Ryan pulled away, not enough to call it ending things, which made it worse. Slower replies. Canceled Saturday. More hours at the garage. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. One Wednesday she called. Are you avoiding me? No, Ryan. The expansion's been. Don't. He stopped. Don't make me drag the truth out of you. Silence, then she asked, did my mother contact you? Ryan closed his eyes. She invited me to lunch. A long silence followed. Of course she did. Evelyn, did she call you a distraction? Not exactly. She used the word. Yes, Evelyn exhaled. Then her voice changed. Not angry. Worse, hurt. I have spent 7 years watching people decide what I can handle. Ryan said nothing. They decide which meetings are too stressful, which trips are inconvenient, which risks are unnecessary, which responsibilities might be too much considering everything. Her voice tightened. And everyone says they're protecting me. I was trying to. I know. That stopped him. That's the problem. You were trying to protect me by making my decision for me. Ryan looked across the garage office at the plans Evelyn had helped him finance. She continued, if being with you damages my career, I decide whether that's worth it. If the press is difficult, I decide whether I can tolerate it. If my mother hates it, I decide what that means. A pause. You don't get to disappear and call it love. Ryan shut his eyes. She was right. Are you in or not? Evelyn asked. No speech, no drama, just the question. Ryan thought about the photograph, his own face in it. He hadn't looked embarrassed. He hadn't looked misplaced. He'd looked happy. I'm in. Silence, then, okay. I'm sorry, I know. Are we okay? No, that answer surprised him. I'm still angry. Fair, but I'm here. Ryan nodded despite knowing she couldn't see him. So am I. Except being back wasn't the same as repairing what he'd damaged. For months they moved carefully. There were good Saturdays, long calls, Sophie and the anglerfish. But part of Evelyn had closed again. Ryan could feel it. Then Marcus finally told him what nobody else would. They were standing inside the half-finished expansion one evening. You have a problem, Marcus said. I have several. No, one big one. Ryan looked over. You think love only counts if it hurts? Ryan frowned. Marcus continued. Claire died. You raised Sophie. You built a business while grieving. You've spent years surviving hard things. Now every time something good happens, you start searching for the sacrifice hidden inside it. That's ridiculous. Is it? Ryan didn't answer. Marcus pointed toward him. You don't trust easy happiness, so you manufacture difficulty until the relationship feels familiar. The words stayed with Ryan. That night he called Evelyn. I've been doing it again. I know. I'm scared. Another pause. That I understand, she said. What I don't understand is why being scared always means I lose access to you. Ryan rubbed his forehead. I don't know. Then figure it out. I will. No, Ryan, really figure it out. Her voice softened. I can handle your mother issues. I can handle my board. I can handle newspapers. I can handle people underestimating me. She paused. What I can't handle is wondering which version of you is going to arrive. He swallowed. I'm not asking you to stop being afraid. I'm asking you to stay present while you're afraid. That became the work. Not romance. Not grand gestures. Work, Ryan learned to tell her when insecurity appeared instead of turning it into distance. Evelyn learned to say when something hurt instead of storing it until it became strategy. They weren't magically fixed. They were simply becoming more honest. And then summer brought another test. A major storm flooded the garage basement. Ryan spent 2 straight days dealing with water, equipment, and repairs. He texted Evelyn, storm damage. We're fine. Buried in cleanup. She replied, stay safe. Call when you can. Ryan assumed she was fine. She wasn't. During the same storm, Evelyn's building lost power. The board used a weather-related delay in her initiative to quietly question management. She spent hours with lawyers and communication staff. Then the calls ended. The power returned. And Evelyn sat alone in the silence of her apartment. She didn't call Ryan. Not because he had done something wrong. Because loneliness had become a reflex. By August, the strain finally surfaced. They met at a coffee shop near Evelyn's office. She hadn't ordered anything. Ryan knew instantly something was wrong. I think we need to stop, she said. The sentence seemed to empty the room. Why? Because I can't keep wondering whether you truly want this. I do. You want it when you're certain. Then pressure comes and you reconsider. Evelyn, I'm not saying you're cruel. Her voice remained steady. I'm saying I'm tired. That word hurt more than anger would have. I've spent years proving that I'm worth trusting professionally. I don't want to come home and make another presentation about why I'm worth staying for personally. Ryan stared at the table. She was right. Then something in him finally stopped trying to sound reasonable. I'm afraid. Evelyn looked up. Ryan continued. I'm afraid of your world. I'm afraid of your board. Your mother. The press. I'm afraid that you're going to wake up one morning and realize you could have picked somebody more educated, wealthier, more polished, somebody who already belonged. He swallowed. And every time I start feeling how much I love you, I also start imagining how much losing you would hurt. Evelyn's expression changed. That's what I've been running from. She looked at him for a long time. Then said, go home. Ryan's chest tightened. I need to think. He wanted to argue. For once he didn't. 3 days later she called. I need consistency. You have it. Don't promise what you haven't proved. He nodded. Then I'll prove it. No grand gestures. Okay, ordinary days, Ryan. That's where I need you. Then ordinary days. They continued. September, October, November, not perfectly, but differently. When Ryan felt himself withdrawing, he said it. When Evelyn began preparing emotionally for an ending that hadn't happened, she admitted it. One October evening, she said, I make contingency plans for relationships. Ryan laughed softly. Of course you do. I'm serious. So am I. She continued. I prepare for the ending before anything has actually ended. So I run before you can leave. And I prepare for you leaving before you've run. Ryan considered this. We're incredibly healthy. Evelyn laughed. We're a very specific kind of disaster. Can we work with that? I think so. The initiative Evelyn had fought for finally launched in November. The board approved it. Even the 3 members who had spent years questioning her. When she called Ryan afterward, he could hear exhaustion underneath her voice. Unanimous, she said. The 3? All 3. Ryan smiled. What do you need? A pause. Saturday done, December brought publicity. Positive this time. The kind that praised Evelyn's strategy rather than questioning her personal life. Things were settling. Which was precisely when the real crisis arrived. January, a blizzard moved toward Boston. Meteorologists warned people for nearly a week. The city prepared. Then the storm arrived worse than predicted. Roads closed. Snow piled up. Wind pushed against buildings hard enough to make windows tremble. That same week, Evelyn discovered something she didn't tell Ryan. Several board members had met privately. Not an official meeting, a dinner. The conversation had included 2 words, succession planning. Evelyn had spent 7 years proving herself. And apparently, somewhere behind closed doors, she was still being discussed as temporary. Friday night, she sat alone in her apartment watching snow swallow Boston. She worked. Answered emails. Ate half a dinner. Tried reading. Tried television. Nothing quieted her mind. Eventually, without consciously deciding to, she put on her coat. Her doorman saw her leave shortly after 11. Evelyn headed toward the Charles River. She had always gone near water when she needed to think. Usually it helped. That night, it almost killed her. She followed a familiar walkway. Snow and ice had covered the surface. At an old pedestrian bridge, a locked seasonal gate had a narrow opening she knew she could navigate. She went through. The wind was vicious over the river. Halfway across, she stopped. Then her wheelchair moved. Barely. At first she thought it was the wind. Then the chair slid again. The bridge had a slight drainage grade toward the side, normally invisible. On ice, it became dangerous. Evelyn grabbed the railing. Her wheels kept moving. She tried to correct. Nothing caught. The dark river lay below. The chair slipped again, and for one terrible second, Evelyn understood exactly what was happening. Then she heard her name. Evelyn. Ryan, he came through the gate running, nearly fell, caught himself, and reached her from behind. Both hands clamped onto the chair. His boots slid. He dropped his weight backward. For several seconds, neither moved. Ryan's shoulders shook with effort. The wind screamed around them. Finally, the chair stopped. He slowly repositioned it until the wheels faced a safer angle. Then he moved in front of her. "Are you hurt?" Evelyn looked down. Her hands were shaking. "No, you sure?" Yes, Ryan crouched there in the snow. His coat soaked, hair white with ice, breathing hard. He stared at her, then said the words he'd spent nearly a year being afraid to say. "I love you." Evelyn stopped breathing for a second. Ryan didn't look away. "I love you. I've loved you for months." His voice cracked. "And I'm tired of letting fear make decisions for me." Snow blew between them. "I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared of not fitting into your life. I'm scared of all of it." He shook his head. "But none of those fears are bigger than what I feel when I imagine a life where I chose to walk away from you." Evelyn stared at him. "Ryan, yeah? Get me off this bridge." Despite everything, he almost laughed. Right, they moved slowly. Ryan kept one hand behind the chair and watched every inch of ice. When they reached safer ground, Evelyn finally asked, "How did you find me?" "I went to your apartment." "Why?" "You sounded wrong earlier." "My doorman told you?" "He said you'd left 20 minutes before I arrived." "And you came here?" "You told me once that you go to the river when you need to think." Evelyn remembered. October, a passing comment. Nothing important. Except Ryan had remembered. Her expression changed. "There was a meeting," she said. "What meeting?" "The board. Informal dinner." Ryan listened. They were talking about succession. His jaw tightened. "I didn't tell you." "Why?" Evelyn looked toward the river. "Because I didn't want to need anyone." Ryan moved closer. "You're allowed to need people. I know that intellectually. Let's work on the rest." She looked at him. "Promise me something. Anything. When you're scared, say it." He nodded. "Don't disappear. Don't make some noble sacrifice on my behalf. Don't decide what I need without asking me. I promise." She turned her hand beneath his and held it. "And I'll tell you when I'm drowning before I end up standing next to an actual river." Ryan squeezed her hand. Deal. A few days later, they finally talked about what had happened. Not the dramatic version, the real one. Evelyn admitted that asking for help made problems feel heavier because it meant acknowledging they were problems. Ryan understood. He had been doing the opposite. He made problems heavier by trying to carry them alone. They were more alike than either had realized. Ryan eventually met Margaret again. This time he requested the meeting. They sat in Margaret's Cambridge home office. Ryan noticed a photograph of Evelyn in her early 20s laughing before the accident. Margaret followed his gaze. She used to laugh like that constantly. Ryan looked back at her. She still does. Margaret became quiet. Then Ryan said what he'd come to say. "I understand why you approached me last year." Margaret waited. "You love your daughter. You were trying to protect her." "Yes, but Evelyn has spent years fighting people who think protection means limiting her choices." Margaret's expression tightened. Ryan continued. "And every time you make a decision for her because you're afraid she'll be hurt, you become one more person she has to fight." Silence filled the office. Finally, Margaret said, "That's difficult to hear." "I know. Especially because you're right. Ryan hadn't expected that." Margaret looked toward the old photograph. "I watched her in the hospital for 4 months. Her voice was different now. Not corporate. A mother's voice. I watched her relearn how to live. And I think part of me never left that hospital room." Ryan said nothing. "I've been preparing for danger ever since. I understand. I thought I was fighting for her." "You were." He paused. "But sometimes she needed you to stop fighting long enough to trust her." Margaret nodded slowly. "What do you want from me?" "Let her choose her life." "And you?" "I'm part of that, only as long as she keeps choosing me." Margaret studied him. "Take care of her." Ryan shook his head. "She takes care of herself." Then he smiled slightly. "I'm trying to become someone she doesn't have to protect herself from." For the first time, Margaret seemed to genuinely approve of him. February arrived. Then the first quarter results from Evelyn's initiative. 31% above projections. She texted Ryan only, Q1 plus 31%. He called immediately. "Congratulations, thank you." Her voice sounded suspiciously formal. "How many people are in your office?" 7, Ryan smiled. "Okay, professional Evelyn. I'll be quick." She nearly laughed. "Tonight, when everyone leaves, I want you to sit in that office and remember something." "What?" "You built this. Silence, not your mother, not your board. You." A pause. "I will." She called him at 11 that night. They talked for 2 hours. Near the end, Evelyn said, "I want to stop waiting for everything to go wrong." Ryan leaned back in his kitchen chair. "So do I. I keep preparing for the ending. And I keep running from it before it happens." "So what do we do?" Ryan thought about it. "We stop rehearsing disaster. That's your professional recommendation?" "Yes, very sophisticated. I'm dating an investment executive. I'm learning." She laughed. And Ryan realized he wanted to spend the rest of his life hearing that sound. He bought a ring in March, carried it for 3 weeks. Every proposal idea felt wrong. Restaurant? Too planned. Harbor? Too symbolic. Expensive hotel? Not them. The answer came on an ordinary Saturday, exactly the kind Evelyn had told him mattered most. She and Sophie were at the expanded garage. 6 bays operating now. A 7th diagnostic bay being installed. Sophie had disappeared with Marcus to work on what Marcus described as an educational motorcycle project. Evelyn and Ryan sat in the new office eating sandwiches. She was talking about quarterly forecasts. Ryan stared at her. "Hey." She stopped. "What?" He reached into his coat. Her eyes widened. Ryan held the ring between them. "I had a speech." "Oh no. It was bad. Good decision abandoning it." He smiled, then became serious. "I walked into the wrong restaurant." Evelyn's face softened. "I sat at the wrong table. Technically the hostess. Please don't fact-check my proposal." "Sorry," Ryan took her hand. "I was scared of loving you almost from the minute I understood that I might." Her eyes filled. "I thought being afraid meant I should leave before I could lose something." He shook his head. "You taught me the opposite." Evelyn said nothing. "I'm still going to get scared sometimes. Probably I'll still make mistakes." "Definitely supportive. Continue," Ryan laughed. Then held up the ring. "But I am completely certain about one thing." He looked into her eyes. "I want every ordinary Saturday I have left to include you." Evelyn's breath caught. "Will you marry me?" She stared at the ring, then at Ryan. And for once she didn't analyze anything. "Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. From the garage came Sophie's voice. "Marcus, the small bolt goes first. I've been a mechanic for 20 years. And yet." Evelyn burst out laughing. Ryan joined her. They married in September. Not at a hotel, not at a country club, not at one of Margaret's suggested venues. They married in the courtyard behind Carter Auto Repair. 30 people, warm lights strung between the buildings. Food from Earl's truck, blueberry pie. Marcus, B, Dana, Ryan's family. A few Brooks Capital colleagues Evelyn actually considered friends. and Margaret. By then, Margaret and Ryan had reached something resembling peace, not perfect warmth. Respect. Before the ceremony, Sophie informed everyone that she would not cry. She then nearly cried before Evelyn arrived. Ryan said nothing. He preferred survival. His vows were simple. I spent years believing fear was supposed to tell me where danger was. He looked at Evelyn. Then I met you. The courtyard became completely quiet, and I learned fear sometimes points directly at the thing you care most about losing. He took a breath. I can't promise I'll never be afraid again. I can promise I won't let fear make my choices. He looked toward Sophie. You're one of the two clearest things in my life. Sophie grinned. Then Ryan looked back at Evelyn. And I'm going to keep showing up. Evelyn had written her vows. Of course she had. She unfolded a small card. You never treated my chair like a tragedy. Her voice stayed steady. You didn't pretend it wasn't there either. She looked at Ryan. You understood something most people miss. A pause. The chair changes parts of my life. It doesn't explain my life. Ryan swallowed hard. I spent years entering rooms prepared to prove what I could do. Her expression softened. With you, I didn't have to present evidence. Margaret looked down. Evelyn continued. You saw me before you knew my company, before you knew my history, before you knew anything useful about me. A small smile. You saw me when I was sitting at a table waiting for a terrible date. People laughed softly. And somehow, after everything, you kept seeing me. Then came something only Ryan knew about. For months, Evelyn had been doing targeted physical therapy. Not chasing a miracle, not trying to erase her disability. One limited goal. She wanted, if her body allowed it, to stand with support briefly during part of the ceremony. No symbolism, no inspirational spectacle. Her choice. Her moment. Ryan gave her his arm. A forearm crutch supported the other side. Slowly, carefully, Evelyn rose. The courtyard became silent. She stood beside Ryan. Unsteady, concentrating, smiling. For roughly 90 seconds she remained there. Long enough for the rings. Long enough for the final words. Long enough to begin their marriage standing beside him because she had chosen to. Then she sat again. Ryan kept his hand over hers. You okay? Evelyn looked at him. I'm very okay. Marcus was openly crying. He would later deny it. Unfortunately for Marcus, Sophie had video. Dinner lasted for hours. Earl served grilled cheese alongside food more appropriate for a wedding because Sophie had demanded it. Blueberry pie arrived. As usual, Sophie ate the filling and left the crust. Evelyn quietly took the abandoned crust. Ryan watched. Sophie caught him. What? Nothing. She likes crust. I don't. It's efficient. Evelyn nodded. Sound allocation of resources. Ryan shook his head. You two deserve each other. Later, Sophie fell asleep in a chair clutching Evelyn Jr., the stuffed anglerfish. The party softened around them. Conversations became quieter. People who intended to leave kept finding reasons to stay. Ryan stood in the doorway between the courtyard and the garage. Behind him were the service bays, the business he'd fought to build. Ahead of him were lights, friends, his daughter, his wife. Evelyn rolled beside him. What are you thinking? Ryan smiled. The hostess. What hostess? Marlowe's. Evelyn understood. The woman who brought me to table 4 instead of 14. She made a mistake. Best mistake anyone ever made on my behalf. Evelyn looked toward Sophie. She was probably exhausted and misread the reservation. Please stop destroying the magic. I'm just being accurate. Ryan laughed, then rested his hand over hers. Evelyn turned her palm and held it, exactly as she had on the frozen river walkway months earlier. Ryan looked across the courtyard. Marcus said something that made everyone laugh. Bee shook her head. Margaret laughed too, briefly and without guarding herself. Sophie stirred, pulled the stuffed fish closer, and went back to sleep. Ryan stood there and understood something he'd been trying to learn since the night he walked into Marlowe's. A good life wasn't a life where nobody became afraid. It wasn't a relationship without mistakes. It wasn't two perfect people choosing the correct words at exactly the correct moment. Sometimes you withdrew when you should have stayed. Sometimes you tried to protect someone who never asked for protection. Sometimes you carried things alone because needing somebody felt more frightening than suffering privately. Sometimes you hurt each other. Sometimes you got it wrong. What mattered was what happened next. Whether you came back. Whether you apologized. Whether you listened. Whether you were brave enough to tell the truth before fear turned it into something else. Whether, after every wrong turn, you still chose the person sitting across from you. The courtyard light stayed on until nearly midnight. Boston moved beyond the walls exactly as it always had. Cars passed. Restaurants closed. Strangers met. People said goodbye. Somewhere in the city, someone was probably sitting at a table they hadn't expected to sit at, talking to someone they hadn't expected to meet. Ryan thought back to that January night. Snow against the windows. An $11 beer. A woman holding a wine glass between both hands. "Can I help you?" she'd asked. At the time, Ryan hadn't known the answer. Now he did. She already had. And somehow, without either of them realizing it, he had helped her too. All because one exhausted hostess had mistaken table 4 for table 14. Sometimes the wrong table is only wrong until you meet the person waiting there.